Moving on now, jihadism in Mali is out of control and the ruling junta is facing an existential threat. The latest is the kidnapping of 5 Indian nationals reported by the AFP. And for weeks, the Malian branch of al-Qaeda has imposed a fuel blockade, strangling the economy. The government's been forced to close schools, limit electricity, and call a halt to harvesting in several regions. Swiss transport giant MSC has suspended shipments from Mali, and France's foreign ministry says nationals should leave the country. Well, we're joined now by Adam Sandor at the University of Beyrouth in Germany. He's an expert on the Sahel. Thanks for speaking to France 24. Well, we've just received a flood of bad news for Mali. How is this blockade playing out and what effect is it having on ordinary Malians?
The blockade that JNIM, or Jamaat Nusra al-Islam wal-Muslimin, is really consequential to most Malians, not only those living in the capital. Secondary cities like Ségou and Mopti are also incredibly impacted. Mopti has not had electricity for well over a month, and there's no fuel getting into either of these towns. Bamako itself remains under the blockus, and people wait in lines for hours and hours in order to get the little fuel that actually manages to enter into the city. But luckily, some of these convoys escorted by the military and protected with aerial support have managed to come in over the last few days. Nevertheless, Bamako is estimated to require at least 200 to 300 gas tankers supplying the city every day, which it doesn't manage to actually get done.
What an awful situation for those citizens, such a precarious one. Now, this group that you mentioned, JNIM, which is linked to al-Qaeda, what's their ultimate aim? Do they want to take Bamako? Do they want to topple the junta?
There's fierce debate, actually, between observers of whether or not JNIM desires to take over Bamako and to control the country versus actually just to topple the government. I personally think that the desire doesn't match the capacity, and this is a very, very pragmatic group, which means that at this time, knowing that they cannot control Bamako and they cannot govern Bamako with the different capacities that they have, they actually probably just want to topple the government and then be involved in some kind of governance initiative that would fall out of the toppling of the government if that were to occur.
But surely, in any case, the junta can't cling on for long, given the circumstances.
It really depends on what type of support the junta actually manages to acquire and whether that holds out. Russia is an important partner of the military government in Bamako. If it manages to provide the aerial support that it requires to get things moving in Bamako, this will be very, very important. But at the same time, we have to admit that the military itself is highly divided. We see this from the recent arrests of senior officials in the Malian government and the Malian army just 1 or 2 months ago. And such is the case that if it can actually manage to increase the security scene in Bamako and the rest of the country, those divisions will probably be exacerbated and something will occur.
Now, you mentioned Russia there, but what about more local international support? Obviously, Mali's left ECOWAS, the West African Community, but it does have allies in Burkina Faso and Niger.
Burkina Faso and Niger are in their own situation. So while they are both members of this confederation of the Alliance of Sahelian States, it isn't immediately evident that either of these countries have the capacity to support Bamako in the way in which Mali needs. So in this sense, it's very, very hard to know whether or not these two countries can actually support Bamako. They are also facing multiple insurgent attacks every single day. And so it's quite alarming across the entire region, but I don't see either of these two countries coming to some kind of grand form of support to be able to help Bamako in the way that it needs.
Now, of course, you know this, but perhaps just to remind our viewers, after a coup 4 years ago, Mali turned away from Western allies, mainly France, choosing instead to partner with Russian paramilitaries in its fight against jihadism. Now, I'm going to risk sounding very France 24 right now, but was this a huge mistake?
That is a very difficult question to answer. I think that Malians decided to prioritize their understandings of sovereignty, and this ended up meaning moving away from France partnerships and to kind of move towards a diversification of different security partnerships. Has the security situation gotten worse? Absolutely, it has. Was it better under forms of cooperation, military cooperation and security cooperation with the European Union and with France? It's hard to deny that things are different now and things are much more negative now. But at the same time, we can't really look back and say that France was the thing that kept Mali all together. It really wasn't.
But do we have evidence of the Russian paramilitary being an effective force in the fight against jihadism in recent years?
We see some evidence of it being effective in cities, right? And so we see Africa Corps now being able to provide a serious deterrent force against jihadist attacks for places like Ségou, Mopti, Ansongo, Gao, Timbuktu. However, in between the cities where the insurgents are incredibly powerful and extremely mobile, we haven't seen a really strong, significant positive effect. As a matter of fact, we've seen the exacerbation of conflict dynamics in those rural areas and increasing human rights abuses and just a complete flaunting of international humanitarian law and the laws of war, which these Russian partners do not focus on.
Adam, Sandor, thank you so much for your insight there. Really crucial to get the specifics of what's going on in Mali. Thank you.